There's something very strange happening in my family on New Year's Eve. This story was submitted by someone named Kate, and it's called Who the F is Mark, and it's allegedly true. She says that the story starts a long time ago, kind of, because her family has this big New Year's Eve party every single year. And she has a decently large family. Like, her mom is one of four siblings, and then between those four siblings, they have 12 kids, so she has 11 cousins. Kate herself is an only child, and she grew up going to these parties, and the location always changed, so sometimes her parents hosted, sometimes it was at one of her aunts or uncle's houses. But it was always very fun. Like, she loved hanging out with her cousins when she was growing up, and they always took a lot of pictures and played a lot of games. But when Kate was 18, she moved out of state for college. She ended up staying in the city where she went to college for a few years after graduating, so she missed a bunch of years of these New Year's Eve parties. A few of her other cousins had moved out of state as well, so there were about 6 years where not everybody in the family was present, although those who were in the state where the party took place still went to these parties. It was just never the full family until 3 years ago. Somebody put all of the cousins in a big group chat, and they were like, you know what, we should all go back this year because grandma has Alzheimer's. Kate said she has some good days, some bad days, but it's getting rough and they don't know how many more New Year's Eve parties they're going to have with grandma. So Kate and her cousins are all like, yeah, this is an amazing idea. We're all going to go home for this New Year's Eve party, and her uncle is hosting. And it's the first time everybody's gotten together, like I said, in 6 years. So they all get to the party, and Kate's one of the first to arrive. She brings her boyfriend, who she's been dating for a while, and so it's his first time meeting the family as well. As people filter in, she's meeting some significant others that she's never met before, but she's like waiting for the next cousin to show up and like the next aunt to show up, and like there's always somebody still coming through the door as the night goes on. Around 8 p.m., they are playing Cards Against Humanity, and Kate looks at one of her cousins that she's sitting next to, and she's like, who are we still missing? And her cousin's like, oh, we're missing so-and-so and so-and-so. And eventually, so-and-so and so-and-so get in, and they say hi to everybody. But Kate can't shake the feeling that somebody's still missing. So she's looking around the table as they're playing this game, and she's like going through a mental checklist, like, okay, this person's here, this person's here. And she realizes that all of her cousins are accounted for, all of the parents are accounted for. And she's like, oh, I don't know why I have this feeling that somebody's missing, you know? And her boyfriend's like, no, it's fine. Seriously, stop introducing me to people. And it's like a joke and all that. And she's like, no, I guess, you know, you've met everybody. Everybody's here. And as soon as she says that, her other cousin looks up from across the table, and her cousin's like, who are we missing? And her grandma pipes up from across the room, and she said, Mark. And everyone kind of looks at each other and they're like, who the F is Mark? Because there's no Mark in the family. And they all look around. They're like, no, everybody's here. They just think grandma's saying something related to her Alzheimer's because she's mostly with it, but sometimes she says things that are a little out of pocket. And so nobody really bats an eye. Close to midnight, her cousin Colin, who is the son of the uncle who's hosting this party, says, I think we should all take a family photo since it's the first time we've all gotten together and like before anyone continues drinking or, you know. And so they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. So they all take a photo and, you know, it gets put on the internet and everybody's tagged and the night continues. They watch the ball drop, and shortly after midnight, there's a knock at the door, and her cousin Colin goes to the door, and there's a man standing there, and they can't really make out the conversation, but the man leaves, and he comes back in, and he said, oh, he was looking for a house, like he was looking for a party. And the grandma peeps over, and she goes, was that Mark? And Colin's like, I don't know, grandma, like it was just a guy who was lost and looking for a party. But all in all, it was a really successful party, and everybody had a really good time. So Kate goes back to her respective city with her boyfriend. The year continues on, nobody sees each other. The following year, because they had such a good time, they were like, we should do this every single year. And they get in a group chat again right before New Year's, and they're like, does everyone want to go home again for the New Year's party? And Kate's like, sure. She brings her boyfriend, who she thinks is going to be more comfortable because now he's met everybody, and they head back to the state where they're from, and this time it's at her aunt's house. And this time Kate's one of the last to arrive, and she's saying hi to everybody, and she has that feeling again like somebody's missing. And it's kind of talked about in the family, like somebody's missing, we're still waiting for people to get here, but it's kind of hard to keep track of everybody. Everybody's moving around. But they realize, you know, everybody's here. And her cousin, so now the daughter of the aunt that is living at the house, pulls out a photo album from like the New Year's parties of the past when they were all kids, and they're showing all the significant others photos of them and stuff. And they notice that there's this little boy in the photos, and nobody knows who he is, but he's in these family photos from specifically the New Year's Eve parties. And so they're kind of like going around being like, who is this little boy? And they're like, maybe it's a neighbor, was it somebody's friend? But nobody can identify this kid. And so they're asking the parents, like, is this one of your friend's kids? Like, who is it? Because the party has moved from year to year from different people's houses, but this child is consistent in all of these photos. And then finally the photo album gets to the grandma, and she goes, oh, that's Mark. And so Kate's like, grandma, who's Mark? You know, thinking that they're finally going to get an answer. Like maybe grandma was right this whole time. Like there was somebody missing from these New Year's Eve parties from the past. And she's like, grandma, who's Mark? And her grandma kind of scoffs at her, and she's like, Kate, don't be silly. That's your brother. She's like, where is he? Why isn't he here? Like he's too busy to see the family. And Kate's like, I don't have a brother. And her grandma's like, don't be silly. Like, of course you have a brother. And at that point, Kate's mom had to gently remind her grandma, like, I only have one child. I've only ever had one child. Kate does not have a brother. And they kind of say, like, you know, her Alzheimer's is acting up again. But this still leaves a question of, like, who is this child in all of these New Year's Eve photos? Who is aging with the rest of the group? And there was not a photo from every single year, so it was kind of hard, but he was consistently in there from the time they were about 4 until the time they were about 13, 14. So everybody's like, dang, we're kind of old, but not that old. Like, we should remember who this child is, but nobody can put a name to him, not even the parents. But the whole time, the grandma's just consistent, like, that's Mark, that's Mark. And then this kind of serendipitous moment happened because the TV's on in the background and nobody's really paying attention to it because it's not really close to midnight. It's still a few hours before. But Kate said that she heard the name Mark, like, from the TV. So she looks up and they're interviewing people in Times Square, and there's this man on the TV and they're interviewing him and they're like, who are you here with? What are you most excited about? And this man is saying, you know, it has his name underneath, and he says, you know, I would really love to be with my family, but that's just not possible right now. So I'm here, I'm celebrating with the people that I know and love here. And so they're all kind of like, yeah, that was a weird coincidence, you know? Night goes on, party ends. The next morning, Kate and her boyfriend are laying in bed because they're like super hungover from the party the night before. And she notices like her phone is just going off and it's blowing up. And she looks at her phone and the cousin group chat is blowing up. And she notices that her cousin Colin had sent the picture from the year before that he had put on the internet, and he says, this popped up in my memories today. Look at this photo and tell me what's off about it. And everybody's like, who is that guy? And Colin responds, he says, that's the guy that came to the door looking for the party. I don't know how he got in the photo. Like, did he come back? And he's very confused. But in the photo that he had put on the internet and tagged everybody, but this man is not tagged, is just a strange man standing with all of the cousins. And everyone's like, who is that? And Colin's like, no, that is the man that came to the door that night. Like, I'm almost positive somebody must have invited him in. Like, was I that intoxicated? And everyone's like, no, nobody let him in. And like, it's just very confusing. Then Kate says, isn't that the guy that was on TV talking about missing his family in Times Square? And everyone's like, oh, I don't know. I think that you're just like grasping at straws. But Kate's like, I'm almost positive this was the man I saw on TV. So now the question is, upon the third year of this New Year's Eve party in which everyone's gotten back together, is this mystery man named Mark going to show up? Not everybody in her family is convinced that this is some kind of like weird glitch. Like, some people are just convinced that somebody must have let him in and that other people don't remember correctly, and they're all kind of arguing about it amongst themselves. But Kate says she thinks it's very weird. She does not remember personally anyone inviting him in, and she said she doesn't really know what to make of it. So if anybody has any idea of what's going on here, she said she would love to know your thoughts. They are having a party this year, so she said she'll keep me updated with what happens then. If you're new here, Spooky Scary Storytime is a series where I share listeners allegedly true stories about the creepiest or most unbelievable things that has ever happened to them or is currently going on in their life. So if you have a story you think nobody would believe, send it in. We would love to hear it. Oh yeah, I asked Kate for the photos. She did send them, but she said that she didn't want me to share them because some of the people in her family are probably not comfortable being put on this kind of platform with like woo-woo stuff. So Kate will be in the comments though.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of this girl who I went to primary school with, and she was possessed. So, for story's sake, we're going to call this girl Tando, and I was in grade 6. I was in the same class as Tando, right? So Tando was that weird girl that loved to keep to herself, right? And every time like somebody tried to make friends with her, see me guys, I like making friends with everybody, right? And every single time I tried to talk to her, she would say weird things to me. And sometimes she spoke to me in a language that I didn't understand, you know? So unfortunately for me, there was a time where there was this class where we were sitting in alphabetical order, and I found myself sitting next to her at the back row, guys, the last row of the class, and we were in a corner, right? I was sitting in the next to the window, and then she was on the other side, right? Shut. So I started to make conversation with her because really, what can I do, you know? So we start talking, and I ask her like, what exactly are these things that you're doing, like on your paper and stuff like that, or in your books, you know? And she's like, oh, I'm part of the Illuminati, like at night we fly. I was like, girl, what? And she was like, yeah, we fly to houses, you know, we take spirits out of babies. Sometimes when a baby's about to be born and that child was not from a spiritually strong household, like we take their spirits, you know, we are able to take somebody's voice, we're able to make you deaf. Like, she said a bunch of things. A bunch of things that were kind of scary. And she was like, if you don't believe me, I can appear in your dreams today to show you that I was at your house. I was like, really? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, come to my house. And she's like, okay, but thing is, I can't come alone. When we come there, I have to steal something from your house. And I'm like, okay, take a tablespoon and then give it to me the next day. She was like, okay, sure. So we continue talking, whatever. We're talking about these Illuminati, and I ask her, how did you get initiated into this? She's like, her dad is the one that used to love certain music, and they used to listen to certain music, and you know, whatever the things that they used to say in that music, the dad used to follow. And eventually she says there was this song that spoke about a spell, I think, and then eventually the dad wrote the spell and he got initiated into these things, and then he initiated her. And I was like, do you like bringing these things? She's like, yeah, it's actually pretty cool. I was like, shut. Fast forward, it's nighttime, and I actually dream of this girl. She's sitting, listen, in this dream, I'm sitting on top of the bed and she's sitting on a chair, right? There was a chair in my room where I used to stay. And she looks at me and she's like, didn't I tell you that I'm going to come to your house? I was like, what? So I'm just looking at her terrified, and I'm like, she's like, no, there's no need for you to be scared. There's nothing I'm going to do to you. And I'm like, and I'm hearing movement in the house. And I can't, for some reason I couldn't speak to her. And she just looks at me. And she's like, I told you I was going to be here, and I'm hearing movement. She's like, anyways, my people are here and I'm going to give you the spoon tomorrow. I woke up, guys, the following day, and I couldn't believe myself. Like, I remember the dream and I was like, what? Sharp. Go to school that particular day. It's school time. I see the girl or whatever. I see Tando, and me and her don't really speak until the class that we sit together is I don't speak to her until we get to the class where we sit together. That makes sense. When we get there, guys, does she not take out a spoon from my house and she gives it to me, and she's like, is this not the spoon from your house? And she's like, yeah, I told you. And she's like, the problem is that people think I'm lying. Girl. And I told her, I was like, nah, there's no way, man. Nah, there's no way you got the spoon from my house. Even though I had dreamt of her, I just thought, no, man, it must have been a coincidence. There's no way. Nah? She's like, okay, fine. Today you have to count your spoons. Count the spoons and she's like, count the spoons, and then I'm going to take 2 spoons this time, and I'm going to give it to you. And I was like, yeah, do that. She's like, okay. Fast forward, guys, to nighttime. I dream of this girl again. She's sitting on the chair, I'm sitting on the bed. This time she tells me, so this time when I hear movement, she holds my hand, guys, and I can't say anything to her. And we're walking. I think she was the leader of these people because they were shadow-like things in the house. I could see them. They were running around, they were opening the doors, just looking. Some of them were laughing. For some reason, I wasn't scared, guys. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything. This is the dream. She holds my hand, guys. She walks with me to the kitchen. She takes the 2 spoons, and I can't see the people that she's with. She's like, she can see the people, but I can't see them because I can only see shadows of these people, but I can see them moving around the house. They're opening the doors. They're looking like they were looking at my sister. At one time, I went to my sister's room with this girl, Tando, and one of them was just looking at my sister, and I'm like, one of them even strangled my sister, guys. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do nada when I tell you. And then she took the 2 spoons, and then I don't know what happened. Everything just disappeared, right? When I woke up in the morning, my sister's like, she had a terrible dream where something was strangling her. I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything, guys. And I feel like I was too young to understand the depth of what was happening, right? Shapu, fast forward, we're at school. The class where I sit with her is in session. She gives me the 2 spoons, and I was like, girl, what? Mind you, we're sitting in alphabetical order, like how your name appears on the class list, that's the person that you sit with. And I couldn't move for whatever reason. And you know what I used to just speak to her in that class, and then after like that particular class, I used to avoid her because you're a little weird. Like, you're a little weird. Like, I now realize why nobody wants to be your friend and people don't really engage with you because you're weird. What is this? Oh, and another story, I've asked her, like, have your parents ever tried to, like, maybe try to take these things out of you? Because sometimes she used to faint. Sometimes, guys, she used to just faint. and scream. And sometimes she used to faint right in front of the school, and her eyes would turn blue, her mouth, her tongue would turn red. Like, it was scary, man. It was scary. Sometimes her eyes would turn green. But obviously her family told the school that she has seizures. Whenever that happens, we just need to take her to the hospital. We need to call the ambulance, right? And now she's explaining all of these things, that she doesn't have seizures. You know, she knows she's possessed because of her dad, and her family members know, because there was a time where they called a pastor for her. They called a pastor to pray for her, and she slapped that pastor. It was one of those fake pastors from TV that they paid like $5,000 to come and pray for her. And she says she slapped that pastor and she beat him to a pulp. She said she beat that pastor up, and there was nothing he could do. If he calls the police, the family is gonna say, we said she has a demon. He said he could pray for her, and we paid him. You know, so, you know. And she said she beat that pastor, and I'm like, girl, like, don't you ever want to leave? And she was like, no, she feels comfortable in this entire thing. Like, she likes it. Girl, I don't know where that girl is today in life or whatever, but hey, if you get to encounter her and she does the exact same thing, that she'd run from that person. I'm pretty sure now she's at a very high ranking. Pretty sure now she's at a certain level that she's just right next to the devil. Cause that girl, like, she used to say that we take baby spirits like it's nothing. Yeah?
Last night was just the scariest night of my life. Witches and other spiritually awakened people, this is the most serious video I've ever posted in my life, and I am hoping and manifesting that it reaches the right people for answers for this. I'm still shaken up, and I might cry during this, but I watched this video from this person. I'll put their video clip right here. Yesterday morning. And when I was watching it, I felt like tingles in my brain and my head. And like, I don't know what that actually did, but my friend and I last night jumped timelines. We went in while awake. We jumped timelines in life. And it was the scariest, most unnerving, sickening feeling. We did not know if we had died and we were like in the afterlife, or if we were in between reality. I know this sounds really crazy. We can't be the only people that this has ever happened to. I know people astral project and things like that when they're sleeping, and we were not asleep. We were completely sober. Today, we both feel hungover, and I can't even begin to tell you the things that were happening around us and to us, because I don't really want to talk about it again, because it's really traumatizing, actually. And her and I had the same feelings, the same everything. We slipped timelines together. And if you're seeing this and you're like, oh my God, that girl sounds crazy, she's probably on something. I've never done drugs in my fucking life. Not anything except for like prescription for after surgery or something, right? Which I don't like taking anyway because it always makes me nauseous. So we weren't on anything. We didn't have drinks. I just was so scared last night, and all I wanted to do was to still be alive. And I did not know. It was so weird and so scary because I didn't have anything to tether me to reality. And I just want to know if anyone else has experienced this while awake, what it means. And I've lost a parent, right? Like, I've got the call before. And last night was scarier than that. And that's a lot. That's a lot. And I'm just really shaken up still. I just don't know what it means. And all I wanted last night was to just get that feeling away from me, because I felt violated and gross. And if anyone has any answers, or just if this has happened to you as well, just please let me know in the comments. Thank you.
This is my cat, Larry. He's only a couple months old, and he's already learning how to help out with my readings. One of the things Harlow and I teach, no matter what you practice, whether it's witchcraft, Reiki, you're a paranormal investigator, you like to chase UFOs, everything is one. So we tend to put things in categories to help us make sense of it, understand it, which is fine. Whether it's Bigfoot or UFOs or paranormal activity, or your mother came to visit after she passed. You know, do some people only experience UFOs and aliens for whatever reason and never have necessarily seen someone in the afterlife? Sure. And vice versa. Yes. And there's reasons for all of this, because everything is about our evolution and our development. All of this happens to us so we can learn and grow. We have psychic skill sets. We can see, feel, hear, all of us. Some of us can do all of the above. Some of us just hear. Some of us just feel. Even if you're not using it, even if you don't believe, even if you don't know, you still have it. But beyond that, you have deeper skill sets. Is it astral travel? Is it cloaking? Is it time travel? What took place here, though, has to do with an interaction with an ET group. And you might ask, well, how do you know that? Because I look at every single situation as a standalone. Now, I'm not saying there aren't experiences that different people have that match up and are the same experience. Of course. But for me, as someone who reads and as a teacher, I have to see every experience as individual. That way I am open to whatever interpretation may live there. Because if I decide I only practice this, I've cut myself off from everything else. And then the explanation may not align or may not feel right or sit right. So even if we're practicing witches, you are still exposed, just like all of us are, to ET energy. I'm not saying that she is against that or doesn't believe in it. No idea. No idea. I'm just using this as a teaching moment for all of us. This experience, although it may have elements of astral projection, time travel, all kinds of other stuff, yes, not saying that that stuff is not true. But what's triggered it was the presence of ETs. I feel them. I see them. I'm hearing them. I'm watching them. I watched just the first few minutes of the part 1 where she showed us where they were at when this happened. And that's where I started seeing what was happening. But this was provoked by an ET group. We need to find out. Is this a positive ET group? Is this a darker ET group? What was the intention? How did she get caught up in it? Was she supposed to be there and go through this? Was it an accident? What does this mean for her skill sets now? And the trauma that she is experiencing with the memory of it. This is what makes me nervous, because she has memory of something, and that needs to be balanced out. For her sake. And if we don't get to the source of it and we just label it as, oh, it's just this, or, oh, it's just time travel, or, oh, you know, it's just astral projection. If we just label it as one thing and then go, that's what it was, we're cutting ourselves off from truly experiencing all that the universe has to offer. And we're cutting ourselves off from developing as deeply as possible as individuals. But here's the great thing. She can take what everyone is saying, including me, and just take the parts that align. If there's anything I can say to help her and to help those watching, it's to not cut ourselves off from how massive the universe is and that everything is integrated.
This person said that something morphed into himself right in front of him and then was antagonizing him. So we're gonna call tonight's submitter Victor. So when Victor was younger, his parents went away for the weekend and his older brother was supposed to be watching him. But Victor's brother decides that he's gonna go leave and sleep at a friend's house, but Victor doesn't realize this until it's already dark outside. So he said that his house is kind of small, but it has like a weird layout. So from his bedroom, he could see down the hallway and into the bathroom mirror. During the day, this mirror reflects the wall. At night, it reflects darkness. So Victor is up in his room and he starts hearing his brother walking around downstairs. He remembers feeling annoyed because his brother had come back without telling him, and then he hears the fridge door open and cabinets shut, just kind of normal sounds, and then he hears his brother walk up the stairs. Victor then calls his name and is just like, "Hey bro, why are you back?" His brother then answers him from the hallway, but there's something weird about his voice and he can't quite put his finger on it. He said it wasn't distorted or anything, it was just too calm, like he was copying how he would feel if he were tired. So Victor's like, that's kind of weird of him, so he walks over to the door and he opens up the door to go greet his brother. He looks out into the hallway empty. Victor freezes. He said that he still had his hand on the door and that his heart was pounding so hard that he felt dizzy. He said that then his brother's voice speaks again, except for it's closer this time, like it is right in front of him. And what he said was, "Victor?" And he said that he said it quietly, almost like in a voice that his brother would use if he didn't want to scare him. Victor slams the door shut and locks it. This is when it gets even worse. This thing starts talking more. First, it used his brother's voice, then his mom's, then his dad's, and then it started switching between them super fast, almost like it was trying to see which voice would work. At this point, Victor just slides his back down his door and he just covers his ears. But it didn't matter because the voices sounded like they were inside of his head, not coming from the other side of the door. This part is the worst. It then stops using his family's voices and it starts to use his. At first, it sounded like recordings, slightly off, but each time it spoke, it got closer sounding. He then hears his voice clearly say, "You can open the door." He said that this literally almost broke him. And then he just starts yelling, "This is not real! You are not allowed here! This is not real!" He said he is not even sure why he spoke those words. He just felt like they were important because he had never experienced anything like this before. He knows nothing about this type of thing. After he says it though, there's a long pause. Then the voice replies very calmly, "I am allowed if I am you." This is when he notices the mirror. From the crack underneath the door, you could see the reflection in the hallway and something had stepped into view. It was standing where a mirror would show a person if something were actually there. He said it was just like wrong. It was shaped like him, but it just didn't look finished. Proportions were slightly off. The arms were super long and its head was cocked to the side. Almost like it was studying itself, but its face kept shifting, almost like it didn't know what version of Victor to wear. And its smile. It was smiling, but not in a happy way, in a focused way. Then he heard his voice again, except for this time, he saw its mouth move in the mirror. It said, "This is better when you're quiet." He said at this point, he just starts praying out loud. He did not care how he sounded. His voice was shaking so badly, it didn't even sound like words. Then the thing in the mirror stops smiling, and it takes one step closer to his door. And then another. He said that each step was careful and controlled, almost like it was practicing how to walk. As he prayed louder, the reflection started to blur, like it couldn't hold its shape anymore. His face then twitched, and then for a second, it looked nothing like him at all. Then the lights in the hallway flickered, and then the mirror empty again. He did not sleep that night. When his parents came back the next morning, everything looked normal. No marks, no sign anyone had been there. But the mirror at the end of the hallway had a handprint on it. Not dusty, not oily, just slightly fogged, like someone had pressed their hand on it while breathing really close. They cleaned the mirror, and after that, the voices never came back again. But he says sometimes at night when he's looking in the mirror, he feels like he's checking to see if he is there first. And he never speaks to himself out loud anymore because he's afraid that something is there listening, waiting to remember how he sounds. So what did you guys think of that story? Oh, I don't even know what to say about that because so freaking creepy. I've never heard anything like that before. I do want to mention that he did say that the whole reason he found me is because he was actually looking up these types of experiences online to see like if anyone else had had a similar experience, and he found me that way. Probably from one of my doppelganger stories, I'm assuming. But so he had never experienced anything like this before in his life, and this has stuck with him. That's how terrifying it was for him. He also said that he thinks about this almost every single night. That's how much it scared him. I think one thing for sure and two things for certain is that this thing was not good. Not good because a couple different things. Number one, when he started praying, it started to morph and it started to go away, right? And two, nothing is going to mimic all of your family members and try to scare you that way if they are good. What do you guys think this was? Because I am at a loss for this. I don't know. I know a lot of you might think that it is, I can't say the word, it starts with an M, but that it's that, but normally you can't see their faces, right? Am I not right about that? That's what I've always thought, is that they don't have a face normally. And this did. I can't imagine seeing myself. That's like the story that I told about my cousin, who she saw herself sitting at the end of her bed. That is just as scary. Drop all your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions in the comment section, but as always, please be respectful. And with that being said, I'm now going to do my favorite part, which is the shout-outs. Assad Mohsin 96. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you so much for being here, number one. And thank you so much for the comment that you left. That was such a nice comment. Honestly, I have some of the best people who follow me, and I have another one now. And I am so happy that you were here because the comment that you left made me smile so big. It was so nice. It was so genuine. It was so supportive. And I love comments like that because when I'm having a bad day and I see a comment like that, it just makes me smile. And it was a long comment, and I love long comments because they're genuine, number one, and because also they push out my videos, and I know a lot of people know that and do it on purpose, and I just think it's so nice. And I just really appreciate every single thing that you said in that comment that you left. So thank you so much for being here. And I say this to all my spooky babies because I do. I love you. Taj_DJJ. Thank you so much for what you said. I love that you scroll every single night and that you can't stop until you see one of my stories. That means so much to me. Thank you so much. I have some of my storytellers that I really like too, and I cannot go to sleep until I hear them either. So to be that for someone else, like I always say, is so special to me, and it's so exciting and humbling, and I just love it so much. It's so exciting to be where I'm at right now and have people actually enjoy my stories enough to do something like that. Like it's exciting to me, and I love it, and it makes me so happy. So thank you so much for telling me that, and I love you. And with that being said, my name is Kaisa, and I tell your paranormal experiences on here or ones that you recommend to me every single night. So if you're into that, hit that follow button, and I just need you to do 3 things for me. And what are those? Keep sending me your scary stories, have a safe night, and what's the third one? Say it with me. Have a spooky night. Love you so much, my spooky babies. I'll see you in the next one. Spooky kisses and haunted hugs.
What is it with these stories with creatures or entities without a face? I got another story for you from Rob, the creepy search and rescue officer. If you're new here, feel free to go check out my playlist with all the creepy search and rescue stories. So Rob started to get a lot of attention for all his awesome SAR stories, and he started asking around to his circle of search and rescue officers for any input on their own creepy experiences. And one of the things that often popped up was stories about the faceless people. And one of his fellow search and rescue officers shared their story. So this search and rescue officer, we're going to call him Mike, had been doing repairs around the park in his area. So Mike was high up on a ladder repainting an information booth when he heard somebody approach him from behind. A man's voice asked him for directions to the nearest campsite. So Mike didn't turn around because he was up on a ladder, but he did answer back and say that there was no campsite nearby in this park. He did say that if he'd head down the road for about 4 miles, he'd find another park that did have campsites. So Mike asked the man, can he be of any other assistance? And the man said no and thanked him. Mike continues painting, but he is listening, and he said that he never heard the sounds of this man leave. Mike did mention that when this guy first approached him, he just had this extremely uneasy feeling, and he said the hairs stood up on the back of his neck. He said he wasn't sure why, it was just really weird, and he just wanted to finish painting and get out of there. He figured maybe some part of it was just because he couldn't really turn around and look at the guy, but either way, he just really didn't feel right. He also mentioned that before this man even spoke to him, he was hit with a very pungent, gross smell. He describes what it smells like, but I'm not going to go into that detail, but just trust me, it's gross. Anyway, so he's just standing there awkwardly waiting for the sounds of this guy to leave. So after a little while, he figures this person is just standing there staring at him, watching him paint. So again, he asks, "Can I help you with anything else?" Mike said he didn't answer, but he knew, he could just feel that this person was still there. So he finally got his balance and turned around to look at the guy. And Mike says, "I swear to you, when I turned around and looked at this guy, he didn't have a face." He said like nothing there. It was almost concaved and totally smooth. Mike said, "I just about had an effing heart attack because my brain couldn't even wrap around what I was seeing." So Mike started to say something, but all of a sudden he got this weird pop sound in his head. And at that moment, this whatever it was went from having zero face to looking like a totally normal looking guy. He must have had a weird expression on his face because then the guy asked, "Are you okay?" And Mike just kind of shook it off and was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Then this guy asks Mike again about the campsite, and Mike points into the same direction and tells him where to go. And then this guy says, he's not from around here. Could Mike help him get there? So then Mike says, and this is where I knew something was up, because there was no way that he got all the way to where Mike was and didn't know where he was. He also said, and for that matter, how did this guy even get there in the first place? There was no car around. So Mike says, "I'm sorry, I cannot take you anywhere in the company vehicle." And this guy's like, "Please." He goes, "I really don't know where I am. Can you please come with me and help me get there?" So now Mike's seriously weirded out, and he's starting to question whether this is some kind of weird ambush or something. So Mike says, "Look, all I can do is call a taxi for you, and they can come and pick you up and take you where you need to go." And he reaches into his pocket, he pulls out his phone, and this guy immediately goes, "No," and then just backs away and walks away swiftly. But as Mike watched him, he said he didn't leave the park. He just walked back into the effing trees. So Mike's like, F the paint or whatever, and he just jumps down, gets into his truck, and starts to leave. Okay, so listen to this. Mike says that as he pulled out, he looked into his rearview mirror and he saw that guy standing in the tree line again. And he was thinking to himself, how did he get there so fast? And also, he knew with 100% certainty this time he didn't have a face again. And he was kind of watching me leave. And as he went around the bend and out of sight, he said this guy took one step backwards into the trees and sort of dissolved. He said maybe it was because it was getting darker and he might have blended in, but he had a feeling that he just kind of melted away. Oh, that was so creepy. What if he would have helped him out? What would have happened? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you're new here, don't forget to follow for more creepy story time.
The American Wendigo is terrifying. You see, it tries to lure you into the woods by mimicking people or animals or whistling sounds to try and draw you outside. Now, there's a lot of lore around the Wendigo. For instance, they say you should never look it in the eyes because once you do, it will have control over you and can lure you out into the woods. They also say it has this supernatural ability to make pets not be aware of its presence. And it's also said that it cannot enter a home that is not built with wood from the forest which it resides. Now, most of the stories in America of the Wendigo come out of northern Minnesota. Now, there was this woman named Kathy. Kathy said during this period of her life, she was going through some really hard financial times. And she had this friend in Minnesota who owned several acres and had this trailer. And her friend was like, you know, if you need a place to stay until you get back on your feet, you can come live in my trailer. But the trailer, you know, was like a mess. You'd have to clean it up, but you're more than welcome to come here. So Kathy takes her friend up on this offer. She drives across country to Minnesota, and she gets to her friend's house about 8 at night. Her friend immediately takes her to this trailer, which is almost like a half a mile away from where she lives. So Kathy goes inside the trailer. You know, it was like this huge mess, and she started cleaning it up and making it look nice. At about 1 o'clock at night, she started to get tired. So she said, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and lay down. Now, being that they were in the middle of the woods, she didn't think she should lock her door on the trailer because she said, you know, we're out here in the middle of nowhere. Who's going to get us? So her and her dog, they lay down and they go to sleep. Well, at 3 in the morning, she hears something outside of the trailer. And she notices her dog, who's laying right next to her, has lifted up his head and is moving it left to right like it has picked up on something. And that's when she hears her friend's voice say, "Kathy, come on outside." And she almost responded to her because she thought it was her friend, until she realized it was 3 a.m. and her friend goes to bed like at 9 o'clock. And she also thought it was weird that the dog didn't even respond to this thing. So she just lays in her bed holding onto her dog, and the dog is shaking and terrified. And that's when she starts hearing scratching sounds on the side of the trailer. And once again, she hears her friend's voice say, "Kathy, come outside right now, come outside." And this whole time, she's just holding onto her dog, kind of freaking out. And then that's when she said the front door of this trailer opened up by itself. And she didn't want to look. She didn't want to see what was coming through that door. So she just put her head down, and she could hear this thing sort of breathing and groaning as it entered into her trailer. And she hears her friend's voice say, "Look at me right now. Look me in the eyes." And she doesn't respond. She doesn't say anything. And she said she started to say this prayer that she knew when she was a young girl. And she kept saying it over and over again. And eventually, whatever this was, left the trailer and took off into the woods. The next morning, she goes to her friend's house, and she confirms that her friend was asleep and did not visit her. And she said, to this day, she is terrified to stay alone in northern Minnesota.
One night I was staying at Grandma's house, and I woke up around 2 a.m. having to go to the bathroom, but I was too scared to because of how scary the house was. I lay there and I cut my glowworm on. It's a nightlight stuffed animal that you sleep with. When you squeeze it, his head lights up. So I get up and start walking down that long-ass hallway when all of a sudden my glowworm light starts blinking. I'm thinking to myself, please don't go out. It's pitch black dark. I need you. And just like a horror movie, the faster I walk, the more the light starts blinking. So I take a few more steps, it blinks again. And I'm like, okay, shake it. That'll make it come back on. And it did for like 4 or 5 seconds. And as I'm walking down the hallway, it cuts off again. And I start shaking the hell out of it like, please glowworm, cut on, cut on. But it wouldn't cut back on. And now I'm just standing there in the pitch black dark. It was so dark in this hallway, you'd have to feel around for the bathroom door, which was usually cracked, so you didn't run into it. So I got my other arm out in front of me feeling around. As I'm waving my arm around in the air, I hit something else with my hand. It felt like it had skin, hair, so I snatched my hand back because it scared me. I took off running backwards back to the bedroom, like the bathroom. I ain't going to the bathroom. I'll just wait till tomorrow. But when I get back in the bed, all of a sudden, my glowworm light cuts back on. I'm like, you bastard. How dare you? How could you go out on me when I needed you the most? I almost threw it into the wall, but I was so scared of the dark, I had to keep it with me. So I'm laying in the bed with the glowworm turned on, and because the light would radiate a little bit, I could see some of the bedroom, but not a lot. And that's when this thing just kind of like flicked in front of my face. I can now see a shadow. Well, right when this thing got close enough, like almost touching my face, my glowworm cut off again. So I start punching it in the head, like, cut on, cut on. You know, you get so scared, you just start freaking out, and like, that's what I was doing. I was so scared at this point that I grabbed the glowworm by the tail and started banging it up against my knee, which hurt like hell, but I was desperate for the light to cut back on. And it finally did, and then I held it close and just sat there like a paranoid crackhead and didn't move for about an hour. And I remember thinking to myself, even as like a 5-year-old child, like, what is the point of this thing if it ain't gonna work?
I saw something, not all human, eyes glowing, figure looking like a tree. When it smiled at me, what I saw sent chills down my spine. Story time. So my parents always send me away to spend Christmas with this long distance relative. This relative lives like in the middle of nowhere. I'm talking about the only closest neighbor closer to the relative is about a couple of miles away. It's like in the middle of a forest. And he loves that kind of, lifestyle. Anyway, this occasion, I was there and he was fast asleep in bed. I was sat watching TV in the bedroom that he gave me. Then, all of a sudden, I could hear noises coming from outside. I'm talking about something like they were dragging something on the ground, not footsteps. Then, all of a sudden, I hear this like scratching sound. It was as if something was scratching the house, I'm talking about the window, with its nails. Then, I proceeded to hear a knocking sound. I was scared because this is the middle of nowhere and it was freezing cold outside, and who the hell could be out there at this time of the night? I was scared. So I could hear a whisper asking to open the door. So I opened the curtain slightly and I could see this dark figure standing not far from my bedroom window. I kid you not. The eyes were glowing very, very bright red. It wasn't a reflection, but very bright red. It looked very strange. I have never seen anything like it. It moved the hands, but it looked like a tree. Then, It locked eyes with mine, and I was scared. Tell me why the teeth looked very odd. It didn't look human. Then it said something, "Let me in. Please let me in." I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I was frozen. I was scared. Then I run to my relative's room. Tell me why he wasn't in bed. All of a sudden, I could hear a car coming from outside. Then the door opened. The noises, the calling, the screeching was gone. It was my long-distance relative. He came into the house. I said, "Thank God, I thought you were in bed." He didn't say anything. I told him what had happened. He went out and checked everywhere. He didn't see anything. He comes back and he said, "It's nothing." Then he went to bed. The next day, I told him I was going back home. I could not stay here. But he told me something very chilling, that it is still out there. But whenever you hear it or see it, never answer, never let it in. So what the heck did I see?
Let's read some creepy rural town stories that I found on Reddit. 8 years old in a very rural Appalachia. I mean very, like 45 miles away from the nearest anything on top of a mountain. I was sitting on my couch with my dad at around 9 p.m. in winter, with freshly fallen snow, watching Of All Things Sightings, an old 90s show about alien encounters which scared the absolute shit out of me. Anyway, we heard a knock, knock, knock on the window. Keep in mind it's pitch black outside, so whatever it was could see us, but we couldn't see them. Dad told me to sit right there with the telephone beside me, and he ran outside with a mag light to go see what it was. He locked the door behind him, and he had explicit instructions that if he didn't come back in 5 minutes to call the police. I was terrified. He went around the house and came back in, downplayed it, saying it must have been an animal, but directly after all of this, he took the long-corded phone in the other room and called his best friend to come up and investigate. He thought I was zoned out on the TV, but I was listening. He said, "I'm telling you, there was a knock like someone was knocking on the window to be let in, but there were no footprints." It's still scary, and I'm in my late 30s now. My wife and I were staying at a cabin in a rural town in the mountains. Around 8 p.m., an air raid siren rang out for quite a while. We joked that it might be a zombie apocalypse, and after a while we actually got a little nervous that we didn't know what it was for. So I put on my coat and shoes and walked down the road to a small grocery store nearby. Went in, asked if they knew what the siren was for, and they said, "What siren?" And when I went back outside, the siren was gone. Shut the hell up. That one is so freaky to me. First of all, those sirens are so scary and they remind me exactly of a zombie apocalypse. But like only him and his wife heard the siren. Please. That is so scary to me. I'm from small town Appalachia and my grandpa lived out in the relative boonies. I was home from college once in mid-autumn and went down to visit him. Ended up staying a while and it was dark by the time I was going to take off and head back to Mom's house. He walked me to the back door that had a little 8x10 or so porch off of it, and a set of stairs straight down to a concrete stoop with a single bulb outside light fixture that threw just enough light to see by. The driveway was probably 15 yards away, and since I had parked behind his car, it was maybe a total of 20 yards to my Jeep, 15 more beyond that to the woods. As soon as I hit the bottom step and took about 2 steps forward, something stopped me cold. It was almost a physical sensation. Hair on my arms stood up, breathing went shallow, heart rate up, and my feet were just saying, "Fuck no, we are not going forward." Being a born and raised hillbilly, the first thing I did was draw my concealed handgun and point it at the driveway and the woods beyond as I slid back toward the porch. I take a look behind me and Grandpa had stepped out on the porch with his by-the-door shotgun pointed in the same general direction. I backed up the steps, and he covered me until I got to the door, and we shut it and bolted it. I called Mom and said I was just going to stay the night since it was late already. We sat up for hours trying to figure out what had tripped both of our oh shit meters at the same time, but could never come up with a satisfactory answer. So I'm going to need all of my Appalachia people in the comments, and let us know what could have caused that feeling, because Appalachia is a culture in itself, and I know y'all are going to have some answers for me. So let us know in the comments what you think that could have been that made them not continue their journey outside and go the hell back inside.
This story absolutely broke my heart because these parents were willing to do anything to get their son back, but little do they know what exactly happened to their son. This is Bobby Greenlease. He lives in Kansas City, Missouri, and in 1953, he's attending a Catholic school when a woman came to the school stating that something had happened to his mother. The woman ended up speaking with Sister Moran. She was a young nun that had just came from France because Mother Superior was not there at the time, and also the principal was teaching a class, so she had to do this all on her own. This woman claimed to be Bobby's aunt, his sister's mother, stating that his mother had a heart attack and they needed to leave right away. She seemed sincere and genuine, so she decided to get Bobby out of class, and Bobby ended up going with this woman, but little did she know this was not his aunt. Police speak with Sister Moran, and she had no idea this was not Bobby's aunt. She's absolutely devastated. So she describes this woman. They got into a taxi cab. She was about 5'3", a little pudgy. She was wearing a brown dress and a brown hat. Now, Bobby's father, Mr. Greenlease, is quite a bit older. He's in his 70s, and he's very wealthy. He owns almost all of the Cadillac dealerships in the area, and he's worth about $25 million for back then. So in today's money, it would be about $350 million. Now, Mr. Greenlease has been married previously, but never had any biological children of his own. So Bobby's mother is only about half of his age, but his son, Bobby, is a blessing to him because he's his only biological child. The Greenlease's maid remembers a phone call about 10 days prior that a woman was claiming that she was calling from the public school system, asking some random questions about how many kids were in the home, which school they went to, and if they had any pets, stating that Bobby does have a parrot, but she didn't think anything of it. Police were able to locate the cab driver, and he does remember this woman and Bobby get into the taxi. He believes that she knows him because she was asking him about his parrot, but he dropped them off and believes they got into a blue Ford, but did not give any other description of the vehicle. So police tell the postal system to look out for anything that's demanding a ransom, and they do eventually get a letter stating that we have kidnapped your son. We want $600,000 in 20s and 10s. If you do what we say and you follow our instructions, your son will get home safe, and it was signed M. And $600,000 back then is about $10 million today. The kidnapper told them no police involved, so Mr. Greenlease decided to bring in some of his business associates, which included his adopted son, Paul. Paul was Mr. Greenlease's adopted son from a previous marriage, and he was kind of a troubled kid, and his father ended up sending him to Kemper Military School, but he still remained a close relationship with his father. So it took about 4 days to get all of this money together, and the kidnappers were growing impatient. So there was another letter sent with Bobby's Jerusalem medal that he got from school, stating if you don't hurry this up, you will never see your son again. So that's when Mr. Greenlease and his business associates decided, we don't want any police involved. We will take care of this on our own because we are not going to put my son's life in jeopardy. So the police decided to let them handle this on their own. So the next day, Mr. Greenlease put an ad in the paper stating that the money is ready. So then the kidnappers called stating to give them instructions on where to drop the money off. Mr. Greenlease decided to have some of his men do the drop-off, and they wanted this money dropped off at a church. And these men were thinking, we can't drop it off here. There's too many people, and someone else could take it. So they ended up not doing the drop-off. At this point, they believe that Bobby is already gone. So he's been kidnapped for 5 days, and this story went nationwide. So eventually they get another call from M, the kidnappers, saying that we couldn't do it at the drop-off there because there was too many people. They say, we have the money, we have it, we will do anything you want, just give us our son. So they said, just hold on to wait for further instructions. They never ended up tracing any of these calls because that would mean police involvement, and they did not want to put Bobby's life at risk. So eventually they get another call from M stating where to drop off the money, off of a bridge off of Highway 40. So 2 of Mr. Greenlease's men go to do the drop-off. They throw the money off of the bridge, hoping that Bobby will come home, but he never ends up coming home. While they are leaving the scene after dropping off the money, they do pass a vehicle and wonder if this is the kidnapper, but they never ended up getting a license plate or even following the vehicle. It's been a week since Bobby has been missing, but in St. Louis, Missouri, there was a man named Mr. Hager, who's a taxi driver, who picked up a man named Steve Strand. He stated he was a pharmaceutical salesman, and he flashed some money to this taxi driver stating he needed a fixer. So the cab driver brings Steve to this Coral Court motel, and he realizes he's got 2 big heavy metal suitcases he's bringing into the room with him. He asks his cab driver, can you go out and get a new suit for me? He offers him $2,500 for a retainer, and he's like, okay, I'll go do this errand for you. So over the next few days, Mr. Hager, the cab driver, decides to do all these errands for Steve, which included getting him new clothes, renting him a car, getting him narcotics and alcohol. And eventually he asked Mr. Hager, do you know a person that can get me a new ID? And Mr. Hager, he realizes something is off with Steve. But eventually, Steve pulls out a firearm and he's thinking, okay, I've just got to go along with this. So eventually he's like, we need to have a secret knock. So when we do this, that's when you know it's me, and to only open the door for me. So that night, Steve hears the secret knock and thinking it's Mr. Hager. He opens the door, and little does he know, 2 St. Louis police officers rush in. Thank God for that cab driver going with his gut instinct and realizing something was off, and they were right, because they found the key to his luggage, and when they opened it, there was a ton of cash in that luggage, and they do believe they have found the kidnapper. So while they're trying to question Steve, wondering where Bobby is at, he's going through alcohol withdrawal, and he's having severe symptoms that a nurse had to come in and give him some medication because he's going with such bad withdrawal. So back at this time, this was before Miranda rights. That didn't come until the year 1966. So they're trying to question this man, and they find a business card from an insurance agent named Carl Austin Hall, and they're asking, who is this? Is this you? And he stated, yes, this is me, and I am the kidnapper. Now, Carl himself, he came from a very rich family, but eventually was sent to military school, and he did well for the first 2 years. But the 3rd year is when he found alcohol and became an alcoholic. So his parents were so disappointed in him that they disinherited him. But he ended up inheriting $200,000 from his grandmother, which is about $3 million today, and he had spent through all of that money just within 5 years. Police know that Carl has a partner because it's a woman that ended up taking Bobby from that school. So eventually he gives up her name, and her name is Bonnie Hetty. When they find her, she's in a very small apartment. She had about $2,500 to her name, and she had a black eye. Bonnie is 7 years older than Carl, and she had met him in a bar. She was recently divorced because her husband was very abusive. Bonnie does have her own house, and Carl ends up moving in with her and never leaves. But he realizes he wants more money, and he thought the way to do it was to kidnap a rich kid. And he knew the Greenleases were very, very wealthy. So he gave this idea to Bonnie, and she didn't really want to do it at first. She's like, if you need money, I'll just sell my house. But Bonnie decides to cave in because she loves Carl and would do anything for him. So that's when she goes to the school. She ends up kidnapping Bobby. They end up going into this countryside area where it's secluded, where there's a lot of trees. Eventually, Bonnie gets out of the car to walk her dog because she knows what's about to happen. Carl gets in the back seat, takes a firearm, and takes Bobby's life. And then they had unalived him before they even asked for a ransom. It just absolutely breaks my heart. They did not have to do that. They then took Bobby's body, buried him in the back of Bonnie's home. Because Carl knew that the Greenleases were wealthy because he went to the same military school as Mr. Greenlease's son, Paul. And he knew that his family was very wealthy, so that's why he targeted this family. So what he ended up doing is they got a cheap apartment, and Bonnie was so upset that he got a cheap apartment. So he ended up punching her in the face, giving her that black eye. She got knocked out. He took all of the money and left her with only $2,500. Bonnie and Carl were both found guilty, and they were sentenced to death by the gas chamber, and I believe they were executed only 30 days after their conviction. When they ended up finding the money that Carl had, there was still $312,000 missing, and to this day, it has never been found. They do believe that the cab driver was involved with the mob or was working for the mob boss, and it's possible he took some money from him or something like that. And I believe there was a dirty cop, a lieutenant, that was also working for the mob as well. It's so hard not to tear up about this story because I have a son that's probably close to Bobby's age, and I cannot imagine what he was going through. And they did not have to take his life. His parents were willing to give up everything. They did not care about the money. They just wanted their son back. They did not care. They would give every penny they had to get their son back. But they ended up taking his life before even asking for a ransom. It does not make sense. I just will never understand that. They could have easily, given their son back for that money. They were willing to give up everything. I will never understand. But let me know what you guys thought of this story in the comments. Thanks for watching. I love you all. We'll see you in the next one. And please take care of yourselves.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real life boogeyman. You ever felt like you were being watched by something in the shadows? In one of my last videos, I mentioned the Shadow Man. You guys said you wanted to learn more about the shadow people. I'm gonna attempt this makeup look while I tell you about it. So you've probably heard of the Shadow Man before. For those of you who haven't, he's a mysterious shadow figure that might appear in the corner of your eyes or in your dreams. Some people say he's a ghost, and other people think he's a demonic entity. Some people believe he's even a time traveler from a different dimension. But let's trace back his origins and see where he came from. The Shadow Man has shown up in various cultures throughout history. In ancient Egypt, they believed that there were shadows that if you crossed their path, they could cause misfortune or even death. Similarly, in Celtic mythology, there is thought to be a one-legged, one-armed, and one-eyed evil creature. I don't know about you guys, but the Shadow Men I've been seeing definitely have 2 legs. And in Native American lore, there's supposedly an evil spirit that's called Nalusa Fulea, which translates to long black being. These 3 legends may be the earliest references to the Shadow Man. Fast forward to modern times, people are still having encounters with these shadow men. Nowadays, a lot of people report seeing him right before they have sleep paralysis or during. The Shadow Man appears as a dark humanoid figure. Some people even report him wearing a tall hat. One thing they have in common is everyone, when they see him, experience extreme fear. There are many theories about what the Shadow Man really is. We already talked about how he might be a demon, a ghost, or an interdimensional traveler. But some people think he's also just a manifestation of our fears. What do you think? Who is the Shadow Man?
His family didn't give 2 craps about him. Thank goodness for his friends. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Jake Millison. Viewer discretion is advised. This case takes us to Gunnison, which is located in Colorado. Jake Millison was born on January 11th, 1985. And when this case occurred, he is 29 years old. Even though he was only like a couple of years older than his friends always referred to him as the old man of the group. As when they would go to the bar, he would drink Coke, they would drink alcohol. Jake was basically the responsible one, that he was a creature of habit. And most of his time was spent here at the 7-Eleven Ranch, which had belonged to his stepfather. And basically his life was like clockwork. He would do the ranch, he would then go to do his jiu-jitsu, then he would go to the bar to play some pool, hang out with friends, and you could always find Jake on his prized Harley-Davidson. But then one day, that consistency, that reliability just vanished. According to friends, the last time they saw Jake was on May 15th, 2015. Jake and a friend had gone out to a movie the night before. He dropped Jake back off at the ranch around midnight. They made plans to hang out the following day. When the friend tried to get a hold of Jake, Jake never responded. Never got a text back, never got a phone call, nothing. Then Jake stopped showing up to jiu-jitsu. That also became a very big concern. Friends who actually have someone who worked in the police department said, we need to do something. We need to report him missing. Police go to the 7-Eleven Ranch and they talk to his mom, Deb. She says, oh, I'm not concerned. His mom, his sister all said, yeah, this is just what he does. He leaves for long periods of time. But his friends were like, no, he doesn't. But there really wasn't much police could do right then and there because the family wasn't reporting him missing. Jake's friends knew something was wrong because even if he were to leave abruptly like that, he would always tell his friends, always. Every time you would ask his mom, his sister, his family, they're like, psh, don't worry about it. And not only that, since Jake's stepfather passed away in 2009, he was on that ranch taking care of it pretty much more than anybody else. This was also a ranch that's like worth a few $1 million. And Jake was the one who was set to inherit it. Uh-oh, there's a problem. So after several months go by, his mother Deb finally reports him missing because he's been gone too long. When they talk to Deb, she's like, I can't remember the last time I saw him. He's your son. You can't remember the last time you saw him? Then try to say, he's a problem. He has a very dark side. He's into drugs. She was shitting on her own son, who's also missing, and his friends are like, none of that is true. Found out that, as a matter of fact, Deb and Jake were not close. Two of them fought all the time. She said he was a reckless person. He always acted impulsively. He never made the right choice. After Jake's disappearance, one of his sisters, his older sister Stephanie, and Stephanie's husband David Jackson, they became instrumental in taking care of the ranch all of a sudden. They would say, we're going to turn this ranch around and take care of it like it should have been. Again, shitting on Jake for how he had been taking care of the ranch. Then a friend of Stephanie and David's was asked to work as a ranch hand, and Jeremy said after a while, it just became very strange there. And he would talk to police just to kind of voice his concerns. This will finally lead to police and the prosecutor getting a warrant to search the 7-Eleven ranch. They arrive. Before they can execute the warrant, Deb, his mother, comes forward. I killed him. I shot and killed my son. He was asleep in his bed and I shot him. And says she dragged her son's body down the flight of stairs and buried him all on her own. Deb is a very small, very petite woman. She was also battling cancer when all of this happened. Police did not believe for a single moment that she was able to lift her son, who was significantly heavier than her, down a flight of stairs and bury him all on her own. Someone else had to be involved. Like, for example, his own sister Stephanie and Stephanie's husband David. Police would uncover that Stephanie had a desire to be the one to inherit the ranch, the $3 million+ ranch. The way she could do that is if Jake Millison is no longer in the picture. Meanwhile, Deb ends up pleading guilty to second-degree murder and keeps saying, I did it all on my own. She was found guilty of the murder and she was sentenced to 40 years in prison. She died of cancer in 2019 while in prison. Good. David Jackson would end up confessing and pleading guilty to helping hide the body, which, by the way, they found buried underneath a large manure pile. They found him. He was shot to death. He was there the entire time. But he ends up getting 10 years in prison. Stephanie then confesses her role. She was found guilty of covering up the murder, of aiding and abetting, and also the tampering of a corpse. She was sentenced to the maximum she could get of 24 years in prison. A mother and a sister murdered their own loved one. And why? The why seems to be not 100% known, but the inheritance of the ranch was a big part of it. The real heroes of this story are Jake's friends. We could all be so lucky to have friends like Jake had. They were the ones who pushed police to keep this case going, to find him. They knew something was wrong. And it was because of them that this case was finally cracked, that he was found and he got justice. We can all learn a lesson from Jake's friends. A body would wash up on a New Zealand beach 3 days after Christmas. To this day, they have no idea who killed him. Hello, true crimers. This is the case of David Robinson. Viewer discretion is advised. So we are going to New Zealand for this one. December 28th, 1998, on a beach just outside of the area of Ross. The body of a younger male was found on the beach, and he had a single gunshot wound right between his eyes. It seemed to be an execution-style shooting, but they don't believe that this man was shot and killed here on the beach. So he was in his clothes, but he was not in his shoes. They did find a shoe a ways down the beach. They believed he had washed up on shore. Using fingerprints, they were able to quickly identify the individual as 25-year-old David Robinson. He had a lengthy criminal history, and which is why it was really quick for them to find his fingerprint. Police would notify his parents, and that's when police would find out that his parents hadn't really even seen him for like 7 years. David was born in 1973, and his parents said that from a very early age, he was a bit of a problem. He got into trouble all the time. Never for anything like violent, it was really primarily he just stole a lot of stuff. His parents tried everything to, get him help, but nothing ever seemed to work. They said that David was like Jekyll and Hyde. He had this very problematic side where he was always getting into trouble with the law, especially as he got older. He would steal things and stuff like that, but also at the same time, he was like this really sweet, lovable guy. When he turned 18, he left the house, and it wasn't necessarily because his parents didn't want him there. He didn't want to be there anymore. David wanted to live a reclusive life, and that is what he ended up doing. He lived hand to mouth, living almost like a transient lifestyle. His parents definitely tried keeping in touch with him. You know, they wanted him to be a part of their lives. But as time went on, he just kept not seeing them or talking to them. He did fall into the wrong crowd, so not only now was he, stealing things, now he was heavily into drugs. Last time his parents saw David was when he was 18 years old. Then police walk up to their home in 1998 and say that their son has been found murdered on a beach. And they have no idea who did it. Given his transient lifestyle and the fact that he didn't really have a lot of very close people in his life, it was very difficult to investigate this. But based off of witnesses, there was a very sudden, loud gunshot heard on December 18th, 1998, near the Kakapatahi River, specifically near this bridge. This was very unusual. You don't hear gunshots really ever out there, at least, at that time. And the state of his body told the coroner he had likely been dead for about 10 days or so. He was found on December 28th, meaning his time of death would have been around December 18th, the same day that gunshot was heard. I know police have talked to people that he likely, ran in the same crowd with. Obviously, with him being like a petty criminal and being into the drug scene, it could make for really difficult conversations. People aren't going to want to talk. They had some suspects and persons of interest over the years, but they've never had any concrete evidence to tie anyone to his murder. So they believe he was likely killed on December 18th and then tossed over this bridge. And then his body would have floated naturally down the river and out to sea. Then, based on currents, it would have taken his body to the beach where he was found. And that's all they really know. The only other thing they know was that he was shot between the eyes, and it was with a single .22 caliber bullet. The murder weapon has never been found. There was nothing on his body that yielded any additional evidence, and unfortunately, that's pretty much where the case is. They have no idea who did this. They have no idea why. Sure, they can probably speculate. Could have had something to do with drugs. Maybe he stole from the wrong person. Maybe he was hitchhiking and was picked up by someone bad. Maybe he saw something he shouldn't have seen. There's so many possibilities as to what could have led to this. And just because David was a petty criminal, he stole things, and just because he did drugs, it doesn't mean that this is someone who deserved to be murdered. And it also doesn't mean that his murder doesn't deserve to be solved. It does. He was still a person at the end of the day. A human being who deserves justice, and there's a killer out there. Someone needs to be locked away. Surely someone somewhere out there has got to know the truth about who killed David Robinson in New Zealand. And perhaps that someone is you. If you have any information, you are asked to call 0800-555-111. If you know something, please come forward and say something. A body would wash up on a New Zealand beach 3 days after Christmas. To this day, they have no idea who killed him. Hello, true crimers. This is the case of David Robinson. Viewer discretion is advised. So we are going to New Zealand for this one. December 28th, 1998, on a beach just outside of the area of Ross. The body of a younger male was found on the beach, and he had a single gunshot wound right between his eyes. It seemed to be an execution-style shooting, but they don't believe that this man was shot and killed here on the beach. So he was in his clothes, but he was not in his shoes. They did find a shoe a ways down the beach. They believed he had washed up on shore. Using fingerprints, they were able to quickly identify the individual as 25-year-old David Robinson. He had a lengthy criminal history, and which is why it was really quick for them to find his fingerprint. Police would notify his parents, and that's when police would find out that his parents hadn't really even seen him for 7 years. David was born in 1973, and his parents said that from a very early age, he was a bit of a problem. He got into trouble all the time. Never for anything violent. It was really primarily he just stole a lot of stuff. His parents tried everything to, get him help, but nothing ever seemed to work. They said that David was like Jekyll and Hyde. He had this very problematic side where he was always getting into trouble with the law, especially as he got older. He would steal things and stuff like that, but also at the same time, he was like this really sweet, lovable guy. When he turned 18, he left the house, and it wasn't necessarily because his parents didn't want him there. He didn't want to be there anymore. David wanted to live a reclusive life, and that is what he ended up doing. He lived hand to mouth, living almost like a transient lifestyle. His parents definitely tried keeping in touch with him. You know, they wanted him to be a part of their lives, but as time went on, he just kept not seeing them or talking to them. He did fall into the wrong crowd, so not only now was he, stealing things, now he was heavily into drugs. Last time his parents saw David was when he was 18 years old. Then police walk up to their home in 1998 and say that their son has been found murdered on a beach, and they have no idea who did it. Given his transient lifestyle and the fact that he didn't really have a lot of very close people in his life, it was very difficult to investigate this. But based off of witnesses, there was a very sudden, loud gunshot heard on December 18th, 1998, near the Kakapatahi River, specifically near this bridge. This was very unusual. You don't hear gunshots really ever out there, at least, at that time. And the state of his body told the coroner he had likely been dead for about 10 days or so. He was found on December 28th, meaning his time of death would have been around December 18th, the same day that gunshot was heard. I know police have talked to people that he likely, ran in the same crowd with. Obviously, with him being like a petty criminal and being into the drug scene, it could make for really difficult conversations. People aren't going to want to talk. They had some suspects and persons of interest over the years, but they've never had any concrete evidence to tie anyone to his murder. So they believe he was likely killed on December 18th and then tossed over this bridge. And then his body would have floated naturally down the river and out to sea. Then, based on currents, it would have taken his body to the beach where he was found. And that's all they really know. The only other thing they know was that he was shot between the eyes. And it was with a single .22 caliber bullet. The murder weapon has never been found. There was nothing on his body that yielded any additional evidence. And unfortunately, that's pretty much where the case is. They have no idea who did this. They have no idea why. Sure, they can probably speculate. It could have had something to do with drugs. Maybe he stole from the wrong person. Maybe he was hitchhiking and was picked up by someone bad. Maybe he saw something he shouldn't have seen. There's so many possibilities as to what could have led to this. And just because David was a petty criminal, he stole things, and just because he did drugs, it doesn't mean that this is someone who deserved to be murdered. And it also doesn't mean that his murder doesn't deserve to be solved. It does. He was still a person at the end of the day. A human being who deserves justice, and there's a killer out there. Someone needs to be locked away. Surely someone somewhere out there has got to know the truth about who killed David Robinson in New Zealand. And perhaps that someone is you. If you have any information, you are asked to call 0800-555-111. If you know something, please come forward and say something.